Trey Wright was just 16 years old, soft-spoken, polite, the kind of boy who still hugged his mom goodbye. One June night in South Carolina, his phone buzzed, a message from his girlfriend. "Let's meet." He said yes and walked into the dark. This is the case of Trey Wright, a story of teenage love, betrayal, and a deadly trap. Because the person waiting for him wasn't only her, and he wasn't there to talk. Trey Wright was just 16 years old when his life was cut short on a quiet country road in South Carolina. Police say the boy was lured there late at night, unaware that danger was waiting in the shadows. What makes this story even more haunting is who allegedly set the trap: his very own girlfriend, Gianna Kirsten Mocker. According to investigators, she knew Trey and another teen, Devon Raper, were bitter rivals. Yet instead of easing the tension, she allegedly drove Raper straight to Trey, knowing he was armed and ready for confrontation. Moments later, shots rang out. Trey collapsed where he stood, his young life stolen in an instant. But here's where the story twists. Gianna didn't just play a side role. Detectives say she orchestrated the entire meeting, setting Trey up to die. And as chilling as that sounds, the aftermath of the crime revealed an even darker web of betrayal, one that would eventually pull 9 teenagers into a shocking murder plot. The community was shaken, but investigators were only beginning to uncover the depth of the betrayal. As they pieced together phone records, text messages, and witness accounts, a clearer picture emerged. Trey hadn't simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had been deliberately lured into an ambush. Detectives say Gianna Kirsten Mocker, his own girlfriend, coordinated the meeting while Devon Raper waited in the dark. But what shocked authorities most was how many others were allegedly involved. One by one, names of teenagers surfaced. Kids Trey knew, some he even considered friends. By the end of the investigation, 9 teens in total faced charges connected to Trey's death. Under South Carolina's hand of one, hand of all law, anyone who participates in a crime, even if they didn't pull the trigger, can be held just as responsible. Suddenly, a single act of jealousy had snowballed into a devastating chain of ruined lives. But the real question remained. Why would so many teenagers take part in setting up one boy they all knew? As investigators pressed deeper, one disturbing element kept surfacing: the role of technology. Trey's last hours weren't just pieced together through witness statements, but through digital footprints. Texts showed the exact moment Gianna lured Trey out of his home, while Snapchat maps placed other teens in the area that night. Even more chilling, detectives believe some of the teenagers recorded video during the confrontation, choosing to document instead of intervene. Those clips, now in the hands of prosecutors, may become some of the most powerful evidence in court. But it wasn't only about uncovering who pulled the trigger. Prosecutors leaned on South Carolina's unique hand of one, hand of all law, a doctrine that allows every participant in a crime to be held equally responsible. It meant that each teenager involved, whether they fired a gun or simply stood by, could face the same fate. Yet the question that still haunts Trey's family isn't just about who was there. It's about why no one, even the girl he loved, tried to save him. For Trey's family, the investigation was more than headlines. It was a living nightmare. Her mother, waking each day to silence in her son's room, spoke of Trey as a boy who trusted too easily, who still carried the innocence of childhood. At vigils, neighbors lit candles and whispered the same question: how could so many teenagers betray one of their own? Court hearings began, each one forcing Trey's loved ones to relive the night he was taken. Some of the teens appeared in shackles, others sat quietly, their families watching with disbelief. Prosecutors laid out the texts, the rides, the meetings, all pointing to a chilling truth. This was no accident. Trey had been targeted. And the person at the center, Gianna, was someone their family had once welcomed into their home. But the most agonizing part was yet to come. When prosecutors revealed what Trey said in his final moments, words that would haunt his mother forever. In the courtroom, silence fell when investigators described Trey's final moments. Witnesses said he begged, confused and scared, trying to understand why people he trusted had turned against him. The boy who just wanted to meet his girlfriend was suddenly facing a gun pointed at his chest. Prosecutors revealed that Trey's last words weren't angry, they were pleas for his life. A 16-year-old realizing too late that he'd walked into a trap. For his mother, hearing those details was unbearable. She broke down as prosecutors described how, instead of running to help, some of the teenagers simply stood by, and others pulled out their phones. That cold choice between saving a life or watching it end became one of the most haunting elements of the trial. And yet what came after was even more shocking, because prosecutors argued this wasn't just murder, it was planned, days in advance.
Prosecutors laid out the chilling timeline. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment fight. It was a plan set in motion days earlier. Messages between Gianna and Devon painted the picture. Trey was the target, and the confrontation was inevitable. Detectives uncovered group chats where teens discussed where to meet, who would drive, and even hints about what might happen if Trey showed up. What stunned the courtroom most was how ordinary the conversation seemed, as if setting up a boy's death was no different than planning a late-night hangout. The teenagers laughed, joked, and carried on, while one of them carried a gun. For Trey, the texts looked like simple plans to meet his girlfriend. For prosecutors, they revealed something far darker: betrayal disguised as teenage chatter. But the most devastating betrayal wasn't just in the planning. It was in who Trey trusted most. The girl he loved had led him to the very place he would never return from. Gianna Kirsten Macher's role in Trey's death became the most shocking piece of the puzzle. To the outside world, she was his girlfriend, a teenage love story in the making. But prosecutors argued she was the key player, the one who set the trap in motion. She drove Devon Raper, knowing he carried a gun, and still lured Trey to that dark road. For Trey's mother, the betrayal cut deeper than the bullets. She had welcomed Gianna into her home, treated her like family, never imagining the girl her son trusted most would become the one to hand him over. Even more chilling was her silence. As Trey begged for his life, Gianna did nothing. No call for help, no attempt to stop the violence. Instead, investigators say she watched as the boy who loved her collapsed on the ground. But the legal system wasn't done. The law turned her silence and her actions into evidence, ensuring she would face the same fate as those who pulled the trigger. As the courtroom battles began, South Carolina's unique law, hand of one, hand of all, became the center of the case. It meant that even those who hadn't fired a single shot, even those who simply stood by, would be treated as if they had pulled the trigger themselves. One by one, the names of teenagers were called out, each facing the weight of a murder charge. Families filled the courtroom, some weeping for Trey, others in disbelief at the charges facing their own children. It wasn't just one life lost that night, it was 10 families shattered. The justice system moved forward, but questions still lingered. How could so many teens participate in silencing one boy? Why did none of them stop it? For Trey's mother, the answers don't matter as much as the empty chair at her table, the birthday that will never be celebrated, and the graduation photo she'll never take. And while the trials continue, one haunting truth remains. Trey Wright believed he was going to meet his girlfriend. Instead, he was walking into his own execution. In the months that followed, Trey's story spread far beyond his small South Carolina town. His name became a reminder of how fragile teenage trust can be, and how dangerous jealousy and peer pressure are when combined. For his mother, every interview, every vigil, every tearful memory became part of a mission to make sure no other family would endure what hers had suffered. She spoke openly about Trey's kindness, about the boy who loved football and family dinners, about the son who should still be here. Parents across the state began repeating the same words. Talk to your kids. Watch for the signs. Don't ignore the little red flags. Trey's story became a warning, but also a rallying cry for communities to step in before jealousy turns to violence. But even as awareness grew, the pain remained, because for Trey's family, no law, no courtroom verdict, no headlines could ever bring him back. Trey Wright was just 16. He should have been planning for college, chasing dreams and laughing with friends. Instead, he became the victim of betrayal so cold it still shakes those who hear his story. His girlfriend, his peers, even kids he thought were friends, all part of a plan that ended his young life. This is not just a case about murder. It's about trust, choices, and the hidden dangers that can lurk even in teenage love. It's about a mother who wakes every day to silence, who will never hear her son's footsteps again. And it's about us, the ones left to remember. If Trey's story has moved you, don't let it vanish like so many headlines do. Share his name, carry his memory, and make sure the world never forgets the price of silence, betrayal, and lost innocence. Subscribe to this channel, because here we tell the stories that matter, the ones that must never be forgotten.